There. Integrating design and utility coordination, research, training, and pre-qualification. Working on these today to give you all the answers. Kenny Franklin with Parsons and our very own Jennifer McCleve. Make them welcome.
Good afternoon. How many of you fell asleep in at least one session this afternoon? All right, so I'm going to try to talk to us about why we did the research project, what came out of it very, very briefly, and then talk about the training. And then most important, I'm going to focus today on the concept of integrating design with utility coordination, which I think will be where we want to go in the future. So some of the things that we want to just talk about to start with. What was the state of utility coordination and utility related claims in construction for the cabinet, say for the last 10, 15 years? Anybody know? Okay. So across the country, one of the things that we've understood is that utilities is usually one of the top 3 reasons why there are contractor claims. So it begs the question, why aren't we doing things differently than we have been doing them? So Jennifer, in her wisdom, said, hey, let's look at that. Let's look at why we're having utility related claims in construction and see what we can do to change it. So they empowered University of Kentucky with Roy Sergel to do a research project. And there was a panel of people from across the cabinet put together to talk about the challenges, interruptions, the obstacles that needed to be overcome to do a good job in getting utilities addressed appropriately for roadway projects. So the outcome of that was project management and design lead, Brad Eldridge, asked me to come down and sit with him and talk about what did we do in Indiana that might be different than we did that we're doing in Kentucky. So we talked with Brad for quite a while and showed him our process, the way we had sought to integrate utilities and design, to see if there was anything that he could grasp from that. And he said, well, why don't you work with Roy and Jennifer on this research project, and then out of that we can come up with some opportunities to write some guidance documents. While that's happening, there's massive changes going on in the federal program. So what are some of the new things that you probably heard about that's happening regarding utilities and our highways? What's some of the big changes?
Buy America, Build America.
Buy America, Build America is a massive project or issue that's come out, but also we've never allowed longitudinal installations in the freeway rights of way limited access right of way. And then the Dig Once law came out, or Dig Once mandate came out, said while you're doing projects, you need to be installing fiber in freeways. And then there's just been constant movement in that one thing alone, just use the rights of way to install broadband. Well, before we never allowed it to happen. So it's a massive change. And here's what's the problem. There isn't the resources within the cabinet to manage that additional burden. So something has to be done. What's the big drive right now with electronic vehicles? How are they going to get power? Where are they going to go? So the infrastructure that's needed for the EV charging station is additional use and demand on the rights of way. So how do we manage that? So all of this is happening while we're trying to figure out how to get the regular program out of the way. Then we pass an infrastructure bill. So you had this much money, and you have this much money. With that same amount of resources and staff, you have to deliver that many more projects. So a lot of things going on all at once in the world that we live in regarding utilities and rights of way. So there's an increasing demand to use the right of way, including this limited access right of way. And our big projects now are not immune to this additional burden. When we used to have interstate projects, a lot of longitudinal of the work longitudinally was not really occupied by utilities. It's going to be. So there's just constantly more going on. So here's some of the challenge that the resource or the research found? Lack of resources. There isn't enough people to manage all the demands. How many of you know that federal highway demands that there are daily logs written for utility installations? Yeah, federal highway already says that. That's not a new thing. It's been around for a long time. Anybody ever done that? Well, we don't have the resources for that. Federal highway is starting to push that though. That's one of their agendas. Like we need to be controlling that and managing, inspecting what is being placed in the right of way. So there's a lack of resources. We already mentioned the larger program. A lot more projects coming out the door. Not enough people to get the existing ones done, and you're putting more projects. And what else are they doing at a faster schedule, right? So the same people are having to work harder, work faster to get this thing done. That's not really different though. I mean, we're talking about the lack of resources for the cabinet, but it's the same for the utility companies. Utility companies are stressed for the resources as well. AT&T just changed their retirement policy last year. So most everybody my age, you can guess what that is. Get AT&T that had their retirement eligibility would have lost this tremendous benefit if they didn't leave last year. So a lot of them just left. And that's not uncommon for other companies. So there's lack of resources, more project, less staff. Here's another thing that we uncovered in the research. A lot of inconsistency across the district. Everybody's district does it the right way, but no two districts do it the same. And that's a challenge for utilities that are trying to do work in the state with the state when they cross district lines. So this district expects this district expects that, and that's a big challenge. And then another thing that the research project found was that consultants were underutilized and not trained. So when you ask a district person, why are you using consultants? Well, they don't know what we're doing. They don't know how to do the job. So that's a challenge that the research pointed that training might help. Then the last point I want to bring up, one that is one of the biggest challenges to effective utility coordination is isolated functional groups. So what do I mean by that? Anybody want to guess? What do I mean by isolated functional groups? Okay, yeah.
Kind of like the whole silo situation.
Sure, silos. What are some of the silos that we have inside the cabinet? Right away, one part, utilities, another part, nine permitting. When you think of utilities alone, in most states right now, because of the big broadband initiative, you've got utility coordination in one house. You've got utility permits in another house. You've got your ITS, your own infrastructure that you're trying to put in the right of way in another house. And then you got broadband in another house. That's just the utility groups alone. So the research pointed to some need to break down some functional groups. When you're trying to deliver a project, it's one of the biggest challenges is to get people out of their own department and think about the broader need to deliver the project. People get stuck in their own process. This is how we do it. That functional group mentality can be detrimental to getting out a program that's at a faster pace and more of it. Would you agree with that? Sure. So where are we going from here? We want to improve CCC. Anybody want to guess what 3 C's are? Anybody been through the existing training would know that. Communication, collaboration, coordination. Close. Collaboration is not true. Cooperation, but it's the same thing. Yeah, and we want to improve early coordination. So I've listened to some conversations just in the last 24 hours. The predominant thought is that we are not getting utilities engaged early. That design is moving forward, and then our utility coordination is on a parallel path, but we're really engaging the utilities after most of the design is set. And that's something we identified as a big challenge, something we need to work on. We talked about part of the reason for that is a lot of the discussion about funding. So we want to encourage everyone to use deed phase funds, which are your design phase funds, to account for utility work up front. There's no reason we're not telling a utility you can do your work to coordinate with us from day one. We've got a project, let's understand what you have. There's no reason to wait till we get to the deed phase or utility phase funding, which is after NEPA. And how much design is that? Somebody tell me.
15.
30.
Okay, so our NEPA can be done when we're at 30 to 40% design, and a lot of decisions are already made, and we would have to redesign things to address utilities. So we want to move that forward. And we want to talk about, or we talked about integrating design and right-of-way and utility coordination as a whole. So making sure that we cross functional group lines to talk to one another about what's important. For example, we're not going to get into it a lot today, the training that we want you to go to, we'll talk about it. But when we originally step on site of a project, we've been asked to look at a project for scoping. If the project team has saying, we're not buying right away for this job, that means to me, as the utility coordinator, raise my red flag and say, we're not moving any utilities, right? Because you can't have both of those things at the same time unless you're very, very strategic. So it's not that it can't be done. You better raise that red flag and say, caution here. If you're not buying any right away, don't move utilities. Because there may not be a place for them to go. Or if we're buying right away, did we talk about how much space we might need to move a utility? So we want to integrate design and right away and utility coordination. That's one of the big challenges and why we're going to do the training program. And then another thing, the research pointed out that we need to do appropriate levels of utility investigation. Okay, so Federal Highway said in their national program review across the country, they did a review of all utility coordination across the country. One of the big things they said was states are falsifying their certification, which is the certification is the communication to Federal Highway that you have appropriately addressed all utilities in one way or another. Okay, so when you certify the utilities, you're telling Federal Highway we've coordinated the utilities appropriately. Okay, Federal Highway said in their national program review, if you haven't done appropriate levels of investigation, you're falsifying your cert. So what is appropriate levels of investigation? Well, it needs to fit the needs of the project, because every project's different. But you need to know where the utilities are to have them appropriately coordinated. You can't coordinate what you don't know. Okay? Some Federal Highway, is anybody from Federal Highway in? Should be. Well, not because some states, like my home state, if you haven't demonstrated that you've done utility investigations, they refuse to participate in any utility related claims. You didn't follow the process, we're not paying you. Don't you? A lot of states have moved to that. So, and then we want to talk about designing to avoid. Design conflict management. We call it utility conflict management. That's been the new phrase, but truly it's design conflicts. Because why? The utility is just fine right where it is. In its existing condition, the utility is not in conflict with anything. The proposed design is what is in conflict. We want to communicate to all of the cabinet that the designer is the first person that initiates utility coordination because you're the ones that cause the problem. Here's the thing. When you are a PE and you're stamping plans or you're engaging in the design process, your ethical standard says you're doing the right thing for your client. If you are not designing with a utility awareness, you're not a very good PE. Anybody want to throw anything at me? You okay with that?
I can tell you that there are numerous occasions where the smaller cities, municipalities, they hire consultants to make street improvements, improve utilities, They spit out a set of plans and they worry about the utilities after the contractor's on the job.
Problem. So here's some essential tips for effective utility coordination. First, eliminate functional silos by developing a utility awareness in all groups. So if you're from anything outside of utilities, we would ask you to start thinking about utilities as you do your work. Step across the aisle, do a more bipartisan approach and try to figure out how can you help work with utilities, because utilities can cause big problems. Anybody experienced a big utility problem on a project?
All the time.
Yeah. So the best thing to do is to work with them, design to avoid them if we can. Then a training and a pre-qualification program. So what we have is a 2-day training class that will give you, if you pass the test at the end of the class, you are pre-qualified to do utility coordination for 5 years. So in 5 years, we'll have a refresher by then. So everybody will be going back through a new class to maintain the pre-qualification. Effective tip, appropriate levels of research and investigation for SUE programs. UCM must become a mindset in project management and design. So I recommend, and it's getting traction across the country, that when you have design submittals, that your utility conflict list goes with the design submittal. So the project leadership looks at that and says, I agree, those utilities shouldn't be designed to be avoided. Those are okay to move, or I agree, the next best thing is to get a test hold to verify the conflict. But we put that utility process in the design submittal. We need to improve the utility notes and certification. Can't tell you how many times people have told me, well, I wrote in the utility notes something that the utility is supposed to do. When you write the utility notes, you're talking to the contractor. So you got to make sure you know how to write the utility special provisions or utility notes. And then we want to talk about what is required by the cabinet to do utility inspection going forward. So those are some of the big things we talked about. I want to get out your phones. Everybody get out your phones, go to kahoot.it, and then as you're logging in, create your own fun name, whatever that name might be, something creative and fun. Kahoot.it. And then I need to get on the web. Jason, how do I get here? Jason.
Yeah, Jack.
Oh.
Says not your tenant.
Just a minute. Yeah, I'll get there. I'm logging in while you are. Give me a minute. I do.
Yeah, that's all.
Everybody getting on there, logging in?
That's for the game can.
All right, give me just a second. I'm challenged. You can tell me how to do this. Okay. Let's see. There you go. Oh, there. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to have a series of questions. You get points for your speed and your accuracy. All right. So there's your pin, 616151. All right, we're gonna get started. So here we go. We're gonna have, I think, 14 questions. All right. Double points right off the bat. The most effective way to engage utilities in projects is one of those four. Five seconds. All right, most of you got it. Very good. So yeah, we want to create a partnering approach to include utility conflict management. So again, we're going to talk about utility conflict management in this game a little bit more. We'll go ahead and move on. So see who's on the leaderboard. Smart one. Anybody want to fess up who your smart one is? Is it you, Matt? Oh, it's Libby. All right. True or false? Utility conflict management is basically a spreadsheet and tracking tool for coordinators. Ten seconds on this one. All right, some of you said true. Utility conflict management is not just a spreadsheet. When we do the next question, and we'll delve into that a little bit more. We'll see who's still on the leaderboard here. Oh, smart one. Andy, BC, way to go. My name's in use. Yeah, that's a good one. All right, question 3. Utility conflict management includes Isn't this much better than listening to me talk? All right, I won't ask who put the blue one. Let's just assume that was a mistake. Yeah, it's all 4 or all 3. An activity to determine and list design conflicts. So you have a utility conflict list. And while you're doing design, it's a best practice if the designer, as they're working in the CAD files, who sees the intricate details of the project, build the utility conflict list themselves. They're making the conflicts with their design. They should list those and then share them with the team. So everybody's looking at what is happening. Okay. You won't have, if you're doing that as a team, if every designer from traffic and hydraulics and roadway and bridge is looking at the utility layer and documenting what they create in the utility conflict list, you won't have people putting unnecessary design features on top of a utility. It's a critical mindset. That's the emphasis I want to bring, is if we're going to be more effective in delivering projects and reducing utility related claims, the entire team has to have a utility conflict management mindset. What can I bring to the table that can eliminate unnecessary utility relocations? And it's a requirement of all disciplines. So let's see if smart one is still on the leaderboard. Looks like it. Bandy, you're getting close. Who's Bandy? All right, Matt, you got to get her. All right, baby. My name's in use, moved up to 3rd. All right. Question 4. Critical elements in effective UCM are all of the following except we've already alluded to most of this. All right, reimbursing utilities is not the issue here with utility conflict management. That's a fact. We do reimburse utilities, but whether they're reimbursable or not is not relevant to whether you're going to design to avoid them. How much effort you put into it might become based upon the total project cost to redesign versus the cost to relocate a utility. But when you think about the cost to relocate a utility, don't forget about the time it takes to coordinate the manpower and the resources over those months to make that coordination happen. Okay, so make sure you put the whole life cycle of effort into that analysis. Do I spend $50,000 to increase our construction project to save $100,000 utilities? You could. It could be very, very cost effective, especially with the lead time in getting materials. All right, let's see. Well, you're staying up there, Libby. Benny's right on your tail though there. Okay, Sean moved up. Okay. Utility conflict management is performed by all departments below except let's see if we all got this one. Yeah, we did. Materials and testing may come into play there. There could be occasions where you need to talk about the types of materials that are involved in a project and to decide whether you have to move a utility or not. But mostly it's the other groups. Okay, leaderboard did not change that time. Double points. Here you go, Matt. Get this one. Types of utility conflicts include all except, I might say, categories of utility conflicts. Now, so here we're talking about geospatial impacts were proposed. So something doesn't fit in space with the proposed design or another utility. With non-compliance, we're talking about utility accommodation policies or laws or even utility standards. We have to take all those into consideration when we're doing utility conflict management. And of course, constructability, if you can't construct it, that's a problem. The convenience of design, though, I wrote that because a lot of times we talk about our schedule or what we have to do to get accomplished. And while that's important, it usually doesn't drive making decisions about whether we're going to design to avoid utilities and how we're going to address utilities. We have a change in the leaderboard and 3 new ones up there. Crazy. What? How do you say that? Okay, well, it's crazy.
Crazy utility law.
There you go. All right, good. Effective utility coordination and conflict management requires adequate and reliable utility investigations. True or false? Please tell me you get this one right. There we go. Pretty self-explanatory. Okay, change the leaderboard. We're over halfway. Per ASCE, survey of one-call marks is what level of SUE? Okay, we're across the board. So if I am surveying what was marked in the field by one call, per the American Society of Civil Engineers, that's a quality level D, the lowest confidence level of the SUE quality levels. So quality level D is verbal, what someone tells me where their utilities are, or records. It's not verified. So when we survey one call marks, that's the lowest level of SUE. It's not quality level C because I don't see the utility. The quality level C is the visible, manholes, risers, things that I can see on the surface. Quality level B, to obtain quality level B, according to the SUE standard, you should have a 90% certainty of the horizontal accuracy within a foot. So I know that it's there. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to ask you, how many of the designers in the room, by the way? I'm not going to expect a designer to change your design with quality level D confidence level, because I don't even know if it's there. Last class, we were talking about as-built records sometimes show up on the wrong side of the road. Okay, so that kind of record, I'm not going to have you make a bunch of design decisions on quality level D. If I've hired a supervisor and they're telling me within 90% certainty, you can count on that horizontal accuracy. Now, guys, pay attention to that. And if you can shift your storm sewer a few feet and miss that utility, that's what we should be doing. Okay. Quality level A is a test hole at a precise location. You get horizontal and vertical at one location. You can't call a line quality level A. It's only one point. So utility conflict management needs that kind of accuracy and confidence before they can move forward. Ooh, no pun intended on the leaderboard. Okay. Double points, we can have big change. Utility coordination is best described as an effort to all right, give you more time to think there, and most of you got it right. Very good. So we don't want to say get the utilities out of the way. That is a mindset that needs to go away. So if you're saying that, you're hearing that amongst your project team, you probably need to just put a rubber band, snap your finger or your wrist or something, because get out of the way is implying that there's a negative relationship that needs to be fixed, and we just don't want that anymore. We want to partner with the utilities. Managing utility reimbursement, while that is critical, it's not the best description of utility coordination. It's more communicate, cooperate, and coordinate, those 3 C's with the project. And it's not all of the above, because it's not get the utilities out of the way. See if we got a change. Vandy's back on top. Honey Badger on the board now. All right. Get near the end here. KYTC consultant utility coordinators are responsible for, so if you're a consultant doing utility coordination, very good. Coordinating reimbursement agreements is what we do. We don't establish the status, that's established in law. So we don't do that. We don't execute reimbursement agreements. Only cabinet people can execute the agreement with the utility. We can coordinate it though. Okay. And another change with the leaderboard. Who's BC? Where you go? Get up there. Okay, true or false, real quick. Conflict analysis is mainly performed at certain development stages. Now that's false. Utility conflict management is an ongoing iterative process that never stops. So anytime we're touching the project design, we should be doing conflict management. Okay. There may be a more formal group activity at certain stages, but the mindset and the approach needs to be throughout the project. And that's one of the things we want to drive home. So I'm going to give you the next question, and it's going to sound like I'm opposing my own thought, but we'll explain it. My name's in use is back on the leaderboard. So at what stage of development should a conflict analysis be conducted at a minimum? Since I teach across the country, I have to use phrases or words that you may not know exactly, but you could interpret it. And yeah, scoping. When you start the project, you should do utility conflict management. Give me an example real quick. Somebody, what would you see at scoping if you're a utility person in the field? What would you see that says, time out, we got to look at this different? Give me an example.
Their project that had a 60-inch non-redundant water main on it. So kind of knew from the beginning, so we kind of knew that that was gonna be.
Okay.
Travel problem.
If you, perfect example, if you walk up and your project is an added travel lanes and you see to the right side of your added travel lanes is a power station. Time out, let's take a look at that. That's gonna be serious business. There's a lot going in there, right? So let's not add the lane into the power station if we can avoid it. So at scoping, certainly at preliminary plans, you need to do a formal process. And in final plans and PSD tracings, there should be a formal conflict analysis, even though conflict management is done throughout the project. That makes sense? Say yes. Say yes.
Yeah.
Wake up. Don't go to sleep yet. All right. Not much change in the leaderboard. Last two questions. Double points. We can have a change here. Here's a big one, designers. Elements in determining feasibility in designing to avoid utilities are all the following except. That's true. So environmental and right-of-way impacts certainly critical in understanding, can we design to avoid the utilities and how much effort do we need to put into that? Got a historic district, there's no place to move. Gotta be real careful what we're doing there. Real careful. Especially if it's on both sides of your project. So if you're in a tight corridor. So department goals and delivery schedule. Maybe the department said, you're going to be open to traffic by this date. Anybody who ever worked on a project that said it's open to traffic is your goal? Changes the whole world. So now I don't have the ability to wait on a utility that's got a year schedule to relocate. I may ask the design team, let's get creative, see what we can do to leave that utility alone, because we'll never get it open to traffic if we're waiting on utilities. So your design feasibility changes, right? You can't just say, well, here's my design, because then you may not meet the goal. And then certainly material lead time and utility construction schedules. It's huge right now. Somebody know how long it takes to get a steel power pole or overhead transmission? What's the average date right now?
9 months to a year.
And I'm hearing 18 months. It's moved from 9 months to 18 months to get a steel pole. Okay, so that can blow up everything. So maybe my utility conflict management doesn't really start back at scoping. And I think about what might this project do to the utilities above and below. And the feasibility to design to avoid them may change based on all those factors. So when people ask me, well, when is it feasible? I don't know. Tell me all the details about your project so we can talk about it. All right, does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you. And I think we're going to check the leaderboard one last time and go to the last question. All right. Easy question to finish. Double points, so the rule can change. The pre-qualification for utility coordination inspection is good for Jason, I need my PowerPoint back after this. Very good. So it is 5 years. So you want to get into the training program and get it while it's hot. All right, Jason, what do I need to do to get my PowerPoint back? Just a second. I'll let you do it. Yeah, who won? Oh, wait a minute. Hit next for me. Yeah, I'm sorry. We need to know who won. The podium. Vandy in third. Who's Vandy? Matt? My name's in use. Come on, who's my name's in use? Not going to invent. And BC, let's give him a round of applause. All right, so I just got a couple of things I want to cover again on the slides. and we'll finish up. Any questions about what we just covered in the Kahoot? What do you think the driving emphasis of utility conflict management is? What's the main C's? Three C's, good, yes, what? Coordinate early, I love that. Designed to avoid, there you go. All right. So the next class is September 2021. And I listed some other classes that are available, the NHI classes. Get that when the PowerPoints come out to everybody, you can grab those and look at other utility coordination classes. Utility conflict management is a brand new one. It's web-based. It should be out by the end of the year. You'll enjoy that. So it's a game program that teaches you utility conflict management. So if you're craving more information about utility conflicts, utility coordination, come to our training program. Again, September 20th, we have a few spots left. I think there were 22 in the class this morning. Got to be less than 30 or it's too big of a room. So get in.
Day option.
Oh, yes. So Jennifer wanted to encourage those that are not really wanting to practice utility coordination, but want to be aware, come to the first day. Because the first day is set up for project managers, lead designers, department leads that want to understand what we're trying to communicate. You come to the 1 day session. Then the second day is required for those who want to get prequal. So that's a good opportunity. Are there any questions about the training, the research that was done, and the emphasis that we want to bring to that training program? Anything? Thank you for your participation. I hope you enjoyed it.
It doesn't look like mine. Yeah. Flat or doing